Kia ora tātou, ko Moana Moran taku ingoa, ko Pākehā au, ko tangata tiriti au. Hi everyone, my name's Moana Moran, and I'm here today. Well, I'm not here today, obviously. I am digitally pre-recorded with you today to talk to you about the Good Within Games Aotearoa research collection. It might sound boring, but I'm actually going to make it so interesting. It'll blow your minds. So thank you to the organisers for helping me be here digitally. If you're wondering who I am the director and lead narrative designer for Pathweaver Productions, and I am the Kaitūhono, one of the Kaitūhono at Community Research. Which might make you go, what? That's a lot of words on a slide. Breaking the rules of how many words can be on a slide, really. I wear two hats, as I think many in the games industry do. I am the lead of a storytelling studio, Pathweaver Productions. We make games and narratives that hope to influence the world in a positive way. We have a TTRPG that we're working on and an interactive novel that we're working on at the moment. Chapter 1 is currently available for an alpha test online if you feel like having a little click around in a solar punk fantasy world. And my other hat is I'm at Community Research. Community Research is a research archive. We host research which is by communities and for communities. So if you've heard the kaupapa by Māori for Māori, that's kind of all about how it's not outsiders doing things for, it's people within a community representing themselves. And that's the kaupapa we follow. We follow that for Māori communities and also for other diverse communities that need a little bit more space for their voices amongst all of the jibber jabber from the majority voices. So it's an online archive. It is open access, so everything, all the research that we hold is accessible by you anytime you want. We host things like webinars, we run podcasts every now and then, little mini podcast series on things like te tiriti, and yeah, we have some really cool online communities of researchers from different spaces to connect with each other, like queer communities and ethnically diverse communities. So you might be sitting here going, oh, there's been so many talks today and there's going to be even more talks tomorrow. It's so hard to remember when you go to these conferences, like what the talks were actually about. So the one thing I would really like for you to remember from today's talk is there is a research collection on Community Research's website, which is a collection of research about good with and in games. So the Good Within Games Aotearoa Research Collection. So we've partnered with NZGDC, the New Zealand Game Developers Conference, and just recently we've linked up with the wonderful folks at Play, and we have started collecting the talks from NZGDC, and soon we'll be adding the talks from Play, which have some sort of theme around social good, positive impact with games, or in games, and so by that we mean in the game development community. So it's talks by all of you. You will have seen talks today and tomorrow and in the past years from these events. So anything that has kind of like some discussion around how we can make a slightly better world, either with our games or in our game community, those are the talks that we've got in there. You may know that the talks from the New Zealand Game Developers Conference, they are usually available for around about 6 months or so after the conference, and then they become locked members only, which is a great reason to become a member of the NZGDA. Play, the talks are always available, so all the talks from previous years, you guys can actually go watch on YouTube right now. They're just there, and they're awesome. But this collection is about making the talks accessible forever, and also just collecting things that are in that theme. So if there's any of you who are interested in that sort of thing, if you're doing a project that might be related to it, maybe you're thinking about how to make the games that you're working on have some sort of positive impact on society. Maybe you're in HR or you're running a games dev company and you're kind of going, how do we make this game company really awesome to work for? Well, there are going to be some discussions, resources, videos there for you to access, and it's all going to be at your fingertips. So there's kind of 3 themes on the site. This isn't super important, but just so you know, kind of what we're covering, I guess, is there's games themselves that have a positive social impact. There's kind of a Venn diagram of crossover between each of these themes, so it's not cut in stone, but just to help you navigate the site, really, because there's going to be more than 50, probably closer to 80 or so videos once we're done. So so this one's about games with positive social impact themselves. So games where or methods of making games which are about how people learn, think, connect, do in some way through your game that has a positive impact on our world. So the second theme, where the first theme was a little bit more around your kind of like your educational games and games that have been made to have a positive social impact, this one's more about kind of like how games can promote diversity through normalizing difference. So this is like your like representation in games, and how we make games more accessible for different types of people, and how games can promote well-being. And then the last one is about our game sector. So what we can do for each other to make it more awesome of a place to work, to create, how we can show the world that the sector can be kind, diverse, support well-being, all while making amazing games. It's actually something I'm really passionate about, is that I think one of the things that's really cool about working in the game sector in Aotearoa is more visibly than perhaps other places, we've got lots of women in games, we've got lots of Māori and ethnically diverse people in games, we've got lots of neurodiverse people, we've got lots of queer folk. It's a really cool sector, partly because it's slightly younger, and so these communities haven't felt so much like they've been pushed out by other people. I'm speaking for myself in that regard, and sort of world leading in that sense. So there's some really awesome talks there, and there'll be even more as we go, I'm sure, as we kind of like show people like this is an awesome way to be and an awesome movement to be part of. So yeah, that's really cool that we have gathered that, and we'll keep gathering it as we go. And as I say, as we go, at the moment we've just got talks, but we'd really love to add things like, I know there are people in the audience right now, I'm speaking for myself because I haven't got around to doing it yet, who have written theses, maybe you've written articles, maybe you've had a massive rant on LinkedIn, maybe you've done a podcast, or maybe you've done a review of something that's been kind of like kind of researchy, robusty in its approach. We would love to have those things that I'm sure you guys are holding in your little hearts and heads to add to the collection. So if you want to, if you've got anything like that, you can hop on our website, communityresearch.org.nz. You can just go to Research Library up the top. You can click Upload Research and go from there. And we'll do a little magic in the back end to put your research visibly on our special collections page. So we're about 10 minutes into this talk. You might be thinking this is a bit of a snooze fest. Doesn't concern you. You're not a researcher. You don't do research. Don't even read research. None of this applies to you. Well, I'm here to tell you that you're wrong. Surprise! You might have actually been a researcher this whole time, and you just didn't really think about it that way. In fact, there might be research in your brain right now. So let's explore why. Let's do a free brain check on everybody and see if you're actually secretly a researcher. So let's explore this word, shall we? A researcher is someone who does research. Surprise. And what do we mean by research? What does research really mean when you think about it? So here's a couple of definitions. We've got the Cambridge Dictionary on the. Oh no, I'm not going to do rights and lefts because it's different for me to you guys. And yeah, Cambridge Dictionary on one side and Merriam-Webster on the other. And let's just quickly look at some of the commonalities here between these two definitions. They both talk about detailed study, studious inquiry. They both talk about discovery of and finding new facts, new information. They both talk about how we then interpret these things, how we make new understandings, new theories. And I'd like you to have just a little think and think about things that you're passionate about, things that you're interested in, and how you approach games and how you approach game development, or how you even approach our community, gamers, game developers, and think, is there any difference between those words and you? Let's dig into this just a little bit more because I think there's a couple of important parts that this sort of doesn't quite grasp. So this is the definition from the beginning of the Wikipedia page on it, which these days in the day of AI, Wikipedia is like, not slap. There's got a couple things in here that those other definitions didn't talk about. One is analysis. Particular attentiveness to controlling sources of bias. And then also they talk about how there are several different forms of research. And I think that's a really key part here and really important to when we're talking about community-led research. Because, as I've said here, there's scientific, humanities, artistic, economic, social, blah, 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 blah. A lot of these different spaces, which are all considered research, they have different approaches. So even if we talk about this thing that we have above here, which is talking about attentiveness to bias, right? Now, in let's say in medical science, you've got your classic. We all kind of know about this, even though we're not. Even those of us who aren't the few of us who aren't doctors or scientists in medicine, we know about kind of how they go about this. They tend to have things like blind control groups. They use placebos. They might do a research study where the participants don't know what's involved with the research. That's a bit tricky in terms of ethics, but anyway, those are some of the ways that they try to control for bias, right? We know about those. Now, my background is in anthropology, as well as games and writing and all sorts of things, but part of my background is in anthropology. And in anthropology, when we talk about bias and how we kind of control for bias, I guess, we actually don't try to eliminate bias. One of the things that we do is we say, okay, everybody brings their bias. And so in order to talk about an issue, I need to make myself visible in the research, right? I need to show, instead of the approach where they try to like minimize the impact of the researcher and minimize away the views and biases that the researcher has by kind of mechanically eliminating them. In anthropology, we kind of say, no, let's do the other way. Let's make the researcher really visible. And say, okay, well, who are you and what biases do you bring and how is this going to impact on the research? And neither of those approaches are better or worse than the other. They both have their pros and cons. They're just easier to use in different methodologies. But that's just an example of how research can look profoundly different, even just through a different method, even a different kind of research framework, right? And so let's have a little talk about one of the ways that research can be framed in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So we have some really awesome local perspectives, Indigenous perspectives on knowledge and research, which are kind of outside of the Western boxes that we put around these words, which is kind of what we're trying to explore today, right? What is research when you're not kind of thinking of it in the classic academia, university kind of boxes? This is an amazing video. I can't show the whole thing today, because I don't have time, but if you have time, I recommend just hop onto YouTube and put in Mātauranga, and you'll find it. It's by Tūturu, and here's a segment of that.
Yeah, if you were to hear Mātauranga Māori, just be mindful, it embodies everything. Mātauranga Māori is not one thing. Engari, it's a whole, it's not a part of a whole. It's the spiritual side, the physical side, all in one.
I puta mai te mātauranga I te taiao. The same with our reo and our mātauranga all comes out of this long-standing relationship with the taiao. Careful observation of the patterns, of the movement, of what is called seasons or shifts, or whether we're talking about the māramatagao or other aspects. And so, again, if you look at Mātauranga Āhapu, it's very contextual to the place where they're standing. And there's this concept, and when we talk about Indigenous, it's a very politicised concept. When people think about, well, that's just this idea of culture and the people who were there before colonisers came. There's this other way to understand indigeneity and being Indigenous, which is, the living, breathing, thinking, doing, manifestation of knowledge that comes out of the soils and out of the waters that surround you wherever you are.
E hara a mātauranga Māori I te whakamāoritanga o science. Kei era pia tātou e raruan. Quite clear to see. But science comes under the umbrella, to me, of mātauranga Māori. It's only one aspect of mātauranga Māori. Kōrero tuku iho, that's mātauranga Māori, but it may not be science. All these aspects of mātauranga Māori. So, if you was to say, well, a story is not science, well, you may be correct. But that's because you're looking at two different things. You're trying to compare apples with oranges. But if we're trying to compare science with science, he nui ake pia te mana o tētahi o te mea Māori I te mea Pākehā. Ki te kore tētahi e piki ake I tētahi, he orite. What is science? It is finding out by trial and error, by observation, and coming to conclusions. He pērā te Māori. He pērā te Māori. Engari kei te warike, te Pākehā, ki te roanga ake o te mātauranga Māori. Ane, pēnei o tātou na kōrero atua, pēnei o tātou na kōrero tukueho, kōrero tīpuna, kōrero whaiwhaia, kōrero patupai arehe, he mātauranga anō, wēna. Engari, kai raro tērā I te hamarara whānui o te mātauranga Māori. Ki te titona oka, ki te pūtai au, he orite, kāre noho I rere ki aki. Puta nui te au, if you are a human being, you have science. It's just, I think, the term we have an issue with, and we're not quite, Pākehā can't understand our view of the world and how everything's connected.
Ka pai. So that's a really awesome little, as I say, I've just been able to have a little slice of that, but it's just a little example of how sometimes we have these frameworks around these words, which can create barriers that don't actually need to be there. And there's actually so much knowledge that sits in our communities, in everybody that's here, that is of value. So I just kind of wanted to we've been talking about research, and we've been talking about you guys, and we've been talking about all of these voices within our communities that are of value. So I wanted to kind of like, let's try and kind of break apart this word that is research and kind of find what are the seeds inside it. What are the core pieces when we're not looking at the outside? We're not looking at kind of the skin. We're looking at the pieces of the fruit. Because at community research, we deal with research which is by communities and for communities. And as we've kind of been talking about, it often doesn't have this appearance of research which comes out of academia. It's not that we don't accept academic research, we absolutely do. But it has to be focused on being with a community or from a community. But we're often talking to people who have done some form of research, but who wouldn't call it that themselves because they haven't been involved with a university, they might not have a degree, but they're still following these kind of principles of what it is. And so sometimes people kind of say to me, what does research actually mean? We have these conversations with people about this sort of thing. And one of the ways I often like to frame it is by saying that it's, we've talked about these definitions, but sometimes what I like to say is it's robust and informed inquiry, right? But those words are all quite loaded themselves. So I kind of tried to pare it back and so that we could kind of go through these fundamentals together and compare it to what you do and see where you fit in. So I've done a little breakdown, and this is not the be-all and end-all of how research can be described. I'm sure if there are some people who are really into like research epistemology, that they might be like, you've missed some things or you've blurred some things. But stuff it. Let's just have a go together so that we can figure out whether you actually have research in your brain. So I've got kind of these big three main areas, and one of the first ones is that a person knows a lot about a topic. As we're going through, try and think of something that you're obsessed with. You feel kind of like this is something that you're kind of informed about. Maybe it's an anime from the 90s, maybe it's programming methodologies, maybe it's why people wore too many leather jackets in the early 2000s. It's like a topic that you're kind of like, you got your teeth into, right? So our first zone is knowing a lot about a topic, and I've got kind of the sort of academic-y kind of words in red underneath each of these ones, so they might be more familiar to some of you. So knows lots about a topic. Then we've got the start of the process is you do a thing, you engage with a subject, whatever that might look like. Then we've got you learn from others who also know about the thing. No good researcher sits entirely siloed from the world. Well, there's probably a few exceptions, but in general, we learn from others. And in academia, this can mean going to lectures and reading articles. But if we think about something like mātauranga, it can also be, sitting at the feet of your kaumātua and listening to their stories. Within other cultures, it might look different. Within other communities, it might look different. It's about absorbing the opinions and lessons of others. Then we've got learns from facts and not just opinions. So here is where we kind of like move away from your flat earth kind of approach to knowing a lot about a subject. So this is where we're looking for facts, we're looking for evidence. As the guy was saying in that video, learning from trial and error. We tried things. We tried a thing. It resulted in this thing. We were expecting a different result. Now we have to try again. So here's where we start to bring in facts rather than just vibes. Now, this third area is about being critically engaged. So what do we mean by that? Well, part of that is weighing up different takes. So being critically aware. different people have different takes on something. Some might be right, some might be wrong. And someone who's engaged with the topic is someone who's able to kind of like look at those different takes, compare them to the knowing lots about a topic, which they have to the side, and kind of go, okay, there's these takes and there's what I know, and what do I think? Which ones do I think are valid? Which ones do I not think are valid, and why? They understand their relationship with the topic. So this is the bias stuff that we were talking about. Also like limitations, intersectionality, that sort of thing. So you might say, my relationship with this topic is this, like if I was doing research in Te Ao Māori spaces, my limitations would be that I'm a Pākehā person, and so it's not really appropriate for me to research in those spaces. I can be an observer, but I can't speak with authority because it's not my space. So that's kind of part of what they can be. It can just be like acknowledging where you are in relation to a topic, even if it is part of your space. So, for example, if I was doing research in queer communities, I could say, well, I'm a trans person, so I'm part of this community, but I'm also, like, I'm not AMAB, and so I can't speak to what that experience would be like. So those sorts of things are how we understand our limitations. And then we've got forms their own ideas and thoughts. So when we were looking at those definitions earlier, we were seeing that part of research is coming up with new ideas, right? So coming up with what you think once you've absorbed all of this other context, right? We've got analysis, synthesis, idea generation. And then we've got this bit here, which is about participating in a community. Now, probably some people would argue with me whether this has to be part of how being a researcher, but I would argue that for research to be quality and robust, that this is actually a really important part. So what does that look like? Well, part of it is sharing your ideas. You came up with your ideas. Have you shared them with anybody? And maybe this looks like writing a thesis or writing an article that's published in a journal, but maybe it looks like having brunch with all your gal pals and saying, I really think that blah, and them all being like, well, have you thought about, have you read enough Judith Butler? Or like my friends were saying to me the other day, or I think this, or I think that. So it's about putting your ideas out there. And that kind of crosses over with this, which is how we all grow through feedback and discussion. None of us are the beautiful genius who is always right. We always have to learn from other people saying, well, have you thought about, or I think you might be kind of going off on a limb there. So that sort of thing. It's about how we grow as we connect, right? And this is sort of a bit of a cycle. Like it's not one thing directly always after the other, but it is a little bit of a cycle, right? Because as we get that feedback, we begin to grow, and then we go back to learning from others, and then we do more of the thing, and then so it goes around again. I was going to take you through an example, but I don't actually have enough time. So I would really just like you to think about if you are really into something. Let's say, I'll give you a really fast example. So I could say, I'm really into Sailor Moon from the 90s, right? I've watched a whole lot of it. That's my does-a thing, is I've watched a whole lot of it. Haven't read the manga though. Have I learned from others? Yeah, I kind of have read some reviews, and I follow some people online who are really into it. Do I learn from facts, not opinions? I wasn't sure about this one at first. I was like, oh, how many, what facts do I know other than the fact that I've actually read the thing, right? And then I was like, well, actually, I have gone on a couple of deep dives on Wikipedia about like the history of the magical girl genre, and how like the first anime that had like a compact transformation was like in the 1960s. Like literally there was an anime in the 60s where a girl transforms, so like Sailor Moon is actually like standing on the shoulders of blah 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 blah. So actually I kind of do know a little bit in here. Plus I've done a little bit of research around like gender and media and stuff like that. Well, not a little bit, actually quite a lot. And that kind of crosses over. Weighs up different takes. Yeah, sure. Again, like I've like looked at different people's opinions. Do I understand my relationship with the topic? Well, actually, like I have an interesting relationship as a person who's white, who's Pākehā. I'm not Japanese, and so my relationship is always through kind of like a barrier of translation. Do I have my own ideas and thoughts? Look, I could go on, but we're running out of time. So I'll just say, yeah, I do. Shares their ideas. Well, if I'd had time, I would have talked quite a lot about my ideas about how the magical girl genre should never be compared to like Western superheroes, because Westerners like to put everything in boxes, and the magical girl is like inherently nebulous and is a concept rather than a power set. And this is a really important, anyway, I share my ideas if anybody asks. And then goes through feedback and discussion. Well, yeah, come talk to me sometime and talk about the magical girl genre with me. I'd love to chat about it. So, yeah, that's just an example. And I guess why I bother to give an example is I think you might be surprised how many things that you're into, you're passionate about, whether it's representation in the games sector, whether it's the mechanics of JRPGs, whether it's I don't know, what you're doing in your mahi that is interesting in some way, like users of platformers and what are barriers to fun, you know, like we're all doing research all the time, and you might actually have a really important voice to share with us all. So as I run out of time, let's just remind you, the collection is online, it's accessible to everyone, and we would love to have more added to the collection. This is you guys, these are the people who are in there, this is your community. And this is people trying to make a better world in our community and with our community. So join the conversation. Let's all keep growing together. If you want to find the collection, communityresearch.org.nz, or you can grab this URL, this QR code off the screen right now. If you go to our research library, then click on special collections, you'll find the collection there. And once again, that's me. You can email me at either of these addresses, depending on whether we're talking about research or if we're talking about games, or games and research. The collection, email me at Community Research. Or you can find me, hopefully, either at this conference or at something else. And thank you very much. You get a +1 level up in your researcher skill tree just from being here in this room. Congratulations, and thank you for your time.